Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Phil Risher, and on today's episode, we're going to be discussing how to stop paying for leads and start building a strong brand that grows organically with Branden Sewell. Thanks so much for joining us today, Brandon.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brandon, he's the owner of Seal Pro Painting down in Florida in the Orlando area. He actually used to live in the great state of Maryland, where I live as well, and he moved down to Florida to actually start a church with his wife. And he has a background in the trades, which I'm very eager to get to discuss. Also, discuss like building a strong brand, getting referrals. So, can you tell us a little bit like you started Seal Pro Painting in 2017, and there was some transition that was going on from a company in Maryland to Florida. I'm just curious to hear, like, how did all this happen?
Yeah. So actually, I started out, when I lived up in Maryland, I worked for a company called Perfect Painters and More. And
Hmm.
when I came down to Maryland came down from Maryland to Florida to help start this church, I also started another location of that company. So we were actually called Perfect Painters and More, but we were down in Florida. And I had a partnership, if you will, with the business owner up in Maryland. And, there were just things that I was passionate about as a young entrepreneur and like the way that I thought things should be done versus like how he did things. And I quickly noticed like, okay, this isn't going to work for me for two reasons. One, because I had such a like, stark difference of views on how the business should be run, and two, because it really was not financially feasible for me to continue doing things the way I was with that. So, I was part of that partnership up until 2020. And then in 2020, I negotiated out of that partnership and then rebranded to Seal Pro Painting to where now I'm 100% owner. And before I had two other partners, and it just didn't make sense. And, I love those guys. I respect them in their own right and what, they do. It just was not a good fit for me. So, and we can talk more into like what those differences are, which I think you briefly brought up.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people have this grand vision of franchising their business, and a lot of
Hmm.
times the systems and processes in their business are not tight. And so then they have someone like you who's like, "Hey, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to roll." And then really they don't really have much there that's going to help support someone. And so I could definitely see how that might be frustrating. Um, One thing that I am curious about, so your background is in like remodeling and selling, like before the painting stuff. And one thing doing my research on you was that initially you started where you were just basically like getting leads, like funneling leads into your business and then subbing out a lot of the work. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean that's how I started out. That was kind of how I was taught, was like sales, 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 and then production was just kind of like the necessary evil, and just sub everything out. And I quickly just like I was like, I'm not building a business. I'm not
Mm.
building a brand. I'm not building something that I felt was significant, or even something that I could sell in the future, because I was basing it around other people's businesses, if that makes sense, instead of my own. And so I had more of like a long term mindset where I was like, okay, well, I want to build my brand. I want people to know who Seal Pro Painting is, and I want the people who are going out on those job sites to represent Seal Pro Painting. And there was some of like just the quality control and having control and things like that I was interested in as well, with changing up that model.
Yeah, I agree. I think for a lot of people, there's like two sides of it, like transactional marketing and then branding. And both of them, farming and hunting, both of them can produce results. But if you're really heavy in transactional side, it's just constantly fighting for the next deal over and over, opposed to having stuff
Yeah.
just attracted to you and stuff flowing in more organically because of your brand and your presence. And I think at one point you were spending like, I don't know, was it like $6,000 a month or
More.
something on Thumbtack or
like
something like that?
I was spending like $6,000 to $8,000 a month on lead gen companies, whether it was
Wow.
We kind of would like cycle through them, whether it was like Craftjack, Networks, Porch, Thumbtack, all those different pay per lead
Yeah.
services. And with those, it's a game. It's basically you got to be fast to the lead, fast to close. And that's the name of the game. And then it's just sales. It's just all sales. It's cash flow. That's it. But then what the problem is once that it works until it doesn't. These lead sources that you're using, one, like they could be great like for a little bit, and then out of nowhere, like the lead quality can just go to absolute garbage, and then here you are, you got your situation where okay, I've spent all of this money on these lead services, and now the return on investment isn't there. But and the problem is like if you build your business on that, where's your brand equity in your community? You haven't built relationships, you haven't built strong foundations like for referrals, and you've maybe just solely relied on just the lead volume. But what do? Like in 2020, we noticed that there was a shift in the market, and the leads just they were awful, like out of nowhere. It just got horrible, and then that was when I really had to have a realization, like I can't build my company off of this if I want to build something with like longevity and legacy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people, they think, oh, well, if I just have bigger ad budgets and I just spend more to get leads, then that's how I'm going to grow my business. When in reality, it's like the companies that have been in business the longest and that are growing have been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years, and they are doing all the basics right. And naturally, they're growing over time because eventually, like you mentioned, the rug gets pulled out from under you and the leads dry up, and you don't actually have like a solid business. You just have one lead funnel that's coming in. And I think that happened to you, right? The leads just dried up and you were stuck. You had a large payroll and you're like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah. I had 12 employees, sales rep, production manager, multiple crews, and we grew just from 2021 going into, start of 2022. We were on pace to grow over 50%, and it was booming. I mean, business was like, I was excited, and I was like, okay, like things have shifted. We went through COVID, that was a little rough, and now we're on the up and up. And yeah, so having all of that money into Thumbtack, yeah, just out of nowhere, like they really changed up too. Like that's the other thing you don't have control over is like, how do they divvy up those leads that they're bringing in? So what they changed, you used to just, you would set a budget, and then you would set what kind of jobs you wanted, and then you would get the leads based on whatever your budget was, right? So if I said, okay, I want $4,000 worth of leads and these type of jobs, well, I was going to get $4,000 worth of those type of leads. And the game was like, if I can call them faster, get them a quote faster, I was more likely to convert that and sell that job. Well, what happened is they completely changed up their model where it was like pay to play. It was like, well, now you don't just put a budget of $4,000. We're going to ask you, how much are you willing to pay for this lead? And if you're not willing to pay more than this other company, then you're not going to get those higher quality, better leads. Those are going to go to somebody else. So it was like a pay to play thing. Well, now you have to factor in, okay, well, what's my cost per acquisition going to be? And it was a crazy gamble. It was, I like to think that I know who had like played a role in influencing Thumbtack to change that. A really big guy in the home services space. He talks about it on his own podcast, but I heard him say in an episode, he's like, the future of marketing is who's willing to pay more for leads. And, the big guys are going to like basically force out the little guys. And if they're not able to play, then they're out. And now us big guys can we're willing to pay, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
they have these huge marketing budgets, and so they could. So yeah, that's what happened. And so we went from having like, being on pace to do like, anywhere between 90 to 100,000 in sales revenue for a month, to dropping down to like 35. It was a
Wow.
huge drop.
Yeah.
And my mistake is like, I didn't catch it fast enough. I didn't. It like took me a couple months to realize like, hey, that wasn't just like a weird like off month. Something changed,
Yeah.
and I didn't adapt fast enough. And so then I, like my employees kind of saw the writing on the wall. So I lost 12. I went down to 0 employees.
Oh
And
my God.
yeah, it was pretty crazy. And that happened in like October. So just kind of like the time frame was like May. We had like peaked out. We were doing like I said, anywhere between 90 to 100,000 in revenue a month. And then we had just slowly declined to where like I think my worst month was like 10 grand. Um, and I was like, I'm done. This is it.
Yeah. I mean, what do you
Writing's
do?
all. I'm just gonna close up shop. But then, I hired a coach, and um, you know, uh, figured out to change some things, and was able to kind of like regroup myself, and ended up hiring on another employee, and I think it was January. And then just now we're back up to where I've got you know 2 crews of painters, and then I also have a paver. I'm doing paver sealing now,
Yeah.
so I've got an employee for that, and then I've got a couple subs that are taking on some jobs for me. But yeah, so that's kind of my story.
Yeah. So it sounds like you kind of built a house of cards esque of like leads, but not really a solid foundation. And now you're in the
Yeah,
process of kind of building it back up from the ground up the right way. That it
yeah,
might take a little bit longer, but it feels really good, and you feel confident in building out,
yeah.
teams and bringing on people. You feel confident in what you're actually building. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard lesson to learn. And I think there's a lot of young guys out there who I think were like me, like you're ambitious. You're like, oh, I can like go out here and just sell jobs, like you're the face of the company and then just sub everything out. But it's definitely super risky to do that. And I mean, for some people, like, I guess, that works it. But for me, I was just like, that's not how I want to build a company. And I realized just how quickly it can go wrong. And when you don't have a solid foundation, and so what I learned from the coaching program that I went into, and was really what I like really wanted to build all along, was like a solid brand that had equity in my community, and was building solid relationships, for solid like referrals, and you know getting more work because it was like people knew who we were, if that
Yep.
makes sense.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. So what are some of the things that you learned that you've implemented, like building equity in the community and referrals and
Yeah.
brand? What are some of the key things, like maybe 2 or 3 of them that you're like, yeah, this has been great.
Yeah. So what I would say is, first, you have to build relationships and community, and that's networking, right? So, in the old way that I was doing business, it was just everything was online, so I was just
Yeah.
paying for the leads. I was getting the leads direct to consumer. Um, the shift that I had to make is I had to get out, and I had to get in my community, and I had to build relationships with people, right?
Can can I say one thing about this, because this is so important. We see this
Yeah,
all the time. Like even if you're 5 million, 8 million, 10 million, $20 million, that that part, it doesn't matter about how big you are. It's about doing the basic things correctly. Like if you have salespeople, if you have office managers, if you have people, they need to be in the community, especially if you're like the local company and you want to be the local company. You have to have people that are out there in the community. You can't just be
yeah,
sitting back, because other people are going to come in and do this stuff, and they're going to be the local face. And so
yeah,
many times I see like people have been in business for 30 years, and yeah, everyone knows us, but they're not doing anything. Like they're not going to networking groups. They're not
hmm,
holding, events. There's community events
Yeah.
that they're not even a part of. So I completely agree with you. And whether that's you as a business owner doing that, or you and then a bunch of people on your team, or if you're just starting out, like, this is a great way to grow your business like this. So thank you. I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, and I think it's just, people do business with you, like the person, so they're not just going to like purchase from a logo. I mean, yes, they do to some extent, but at the end of the day, it's you, it's the people that represent your brand who are going to be doing that business. And so like if you don't have your face out there, if you're not going and talking to people, like you said, somebody else is going to step in and they're going to build that relationship and they'll be like, oh, wow, I really like this guy or this girl. And, I'm going to do business with them and forget about, Seal Pro. I'm going to do business with Joe because Joe is right here and he's talking to me. He's meeting with me weekly. I have his phone number. And if somebody needs something, he's top of mind. I'm going to just automatically think of Joe because that's a face. So I think getting out there, staying top of mind with your referral partners is key, and building those foundations. And then second to that is you have to build your brand, right? So you're doing that by getting out in front of these people. You're getting your brand into the community, and you're kind of like that vehicle. And then once you're doing that, I think a big thing that people miss is they don't build community with their clients. So it's like you're building community with your referral partners, you're getting involved in the community, making a name for yourself, getting your face out there. But then the other side is like, okay, well, now you've serviced these clients. Do you just service is it transactional? Do you just go out, you do the service, you collect the check, and then you don't continue to build relationship? Well, you're missing out on opportunities. So we did this before, but we shifted our perspective. We used to like send out thank you cards or send out newsletters, but they were very sales driven. So like, I'd send out, multiple newsletters and stuff a month, but they were always like, hey, get 10% off, or hey, get 20% off on this service, or call us by this date and sign up and we'll give you this. And it was just always sales. And what I had to shift is I had to start building relationships. So then my newsletters were no longer, hey, reach out to us for this sale or whatever. It was, hey, today is my son's birthday. Send us an email, join us in wishing him a happy birthday. We'll read him every single email that's sent in, and we appreciate you being a part of the Seal Pro family. Well, next thing you know, I'm getting like email after from all of these past clients who are saying happy birthday to my son. And, it's just building that relationship where they're like, wow, he's staying connected with us on a personal level, not just for the transaction or like, and of course, like we want to do future business with them, but it's letting them into our world, right? And communicating that with them on a relational level. And that keeps us connected. And then, they're going to start to like feel like they're part of our family, right? Like they know my wife's face, they know my kid's face, they see what we're doing. They're a part of that through those interactions. And so then you just stay top of mind, and then more business comes out of that. And I have plenty of stories where, like just even those simple newsletters and thank you cards and stuff has turned into repeat business or more business.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think the big thing that we run into a lot, doing digital marketing consulting, is people, they want to hit so hard in these emails of like, no, we got to have a sale. We got to have something in here. And it's like, people don't want that over and over. Maybe once or twice a year, there's some special sale. But other than that, it's just adding value, maybe sharing a customer testimonial, maybe cross-selling something, but not a hard sale. Because why would people want to get hit over the head over and over for painting? It's like, hey, I might only do this once every couple of years. Why do I need to, that kind of stuff. So I completely agree with you. What about like Google reviews, like building a brand online? Is there something that shifted from just like, obviously like paying for leads to something else? Are you doing anything different from that end?
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely, as my mindset shifted from like the digital lead services or whatever, I definitely had to change up my strategy and intentionality on social media.
Mhm.
To really focus on building relationships and making sure like people saw us as their local professional painters. And so definitely got a lot more involved in social media, and using that as a tool. And then also, yeah, I mean, Google's always been a strategy for me. And I
Mhm.
think that's just like, for me, it's like common sense. I sit down when I think about my approach as a business owner, I think about how I feel as a consumer, right? And what are those service companies that I interact with that give me those feelings of like, wow, I want to work with them, or like when I think about this service, this is who I think about first, or why did I go with this company versus this one? And then all I do is I just like reverse engineer that back into my approach of like, well, I went with that company because maybe they didn't have, 5 stars, they had 4.8, but the one with 5 stars had 3 reviews, and the one that had 4.8 stars had 1,000.
Yep.
So it was like, it's like a no brainer. Like, well, they have more experience. They obviously like, on average, that's not a bad track record to have like 1,000 reviews and have a 4.8 rating. So, that's just, I'm like, okay, well, having a lot of reviews matters, because, and having them frequent, like not just like, hey, I got a review 6 months ago and then I got another one today. It's like consistently getting those reviews coming in is important, because I think Google looks at that, but I think also your customers look at that. Having a good amount of reviews, and that's a big strategy for me. We recently started using CallRail so that we could really definitively say like, hey, this is where our leads are coming from,
Mhm.
based on like the call tracking. And 100%, our GMB is like our top performing lead source. So it
Yeah.
works, and it's easy to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. One of the things that I'm curious about is you created a service contract for painting. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
So, what it was that part of the coaching that you got, and like how did you go about that, or what? Yeah, how did you come up with this idea, and like how did you do it? How did you figure it out?
Well, like as a business owner, I think of my business in like two ways. Like one, I'm either building it for legacy to pass it on, like to like if I have a son and a daughter, if like in the future down the road they wanted to take over it, well, I'm creating like a generational tool for wealth, right? So I want to build something that has longevity, has a lot of value. And then secondly, if let's say, 15, 20 years down the road, my kids are like, I don't want anything to do with the painting industry. Forget your painting company, dad. Well, I want to be able to sell it, right? Have an
Mhm.
exit strategy. So, what I understand, is that if you can have reoccurring revenue, that's going to get you a higher return, if when you go to sell, because now not only do you have just like a book of business where you've done these one-off jobs, but now you have this reoccurring revenue where like you go to sell it and an investor wants to buy it, whatever. You're able to say, hey, we have like X amount of guaranteed revenue that is coming in annually from our service contracts. So really, I wanted to do it from like building value in my business. So that was one part of it. To like better my future exit strategies. And then secondly, I wanted to do it to, with painting, too common. You're going in, you're doing a painting project, and you don't talk to that customer for, until they need painting again. And painting's not one of those things that you do, over and over again most of the time. It's usually something people do like every 10 years or 15 years, right? So what I wanted to do is, I wanted to kind of find a way where I could stay connected to my customers and draw out the lifetime value of each
Mhm.
customer.
Yeah.
So I knew if I could create a service contract, then that means, okay, well, now I'm not just doing that one off service and then never seeing them again for 10, 15 years, but now I'm going to be at their house, 1 or 2 times a year. And so what I did is I just thoughtfully went through like, data of saying like, okay, how long does it take for us to complete these different services? And I was like, these are services that we could offer that wouldn't take, too much time. They could be done in a timely manner, 4 hours or less. And we can offer this as a service contract to our customers. So that's what I did. I have a list of different services that the customers can choose from. And just from doing this for, as long as I have, I know that we can finish those projects in a good amount of time. And we pitch it, by telling our customers like, hey, like, there's a few different ways. Like there's been like for people who have HOAs and they have like these small projects that the HOAs get on them for, like, hey, you need to repaint this trim because it looks horrible. Well, most painting companies aren't going to want to come out, or they're going to charge like a lot of money to just come out and do something that's only going to take, an hour to do, right? Or they won't be able to get through to anybody. They'll just call these companies and they'll be like, hey, it's not worth my time.
Yeah.
So now that's a solution where these people will call us and they're like, hey, our HOA's on us for this. Like, and I automatically recommend our service contract. Hey, look, let me save you some money. I'll get you on our service contract. Here's the different services. This falls within it. We'll come out. We'll take care of that. If anything comes up, you get up to 2 visits per year. And my guys are in and out, get those little jobs done quick. Front doors, like we get those calls all the time. Like, I can't find anybody to come out and paint my door. Everybody says it's not worth their time. It's not a big enough project. We take them like crazy now, and they're easy for my guys to do. The other thing is like, we'll pitch it as like, hey, are you a family that likes to entertain a lot? Do you have like parties at your house? Are you doing like family gatherings on the holidays? Well, if you're planning those, give us a call, schedule your service. We'll come out, we'll touch up all your trim, touch up all your doors, make sure everything looks fresh and nice. So that when you have those gatherings, your house looks great. You don't have to be embarrassed that your doors and your trim are a mess. So there's like a couple of different angles that we sell it on, but it's worked and it's been great.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds awesome. And if you're listening out there, if you do carpet cleaning, gutter cleaning, roofing, siding, doors, any of this stuff, like these are all things that you could incorporate something like this. HVAC, they already got covered. Electrical, a lot of times just generators, but there's so many other things that you could get service contracts on. Have you seen like, is there a specific price point that people are like, I don't know, man. But if it's like $100, it's like, yeah, it's cool. That's fine. Like, have you?
Yeah, for sure. So when I first started it out, I had this like particular price point, and I was like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe I'm like undercutting myself a little bit, and I need to like bump the price up. Because initially my mindset was like, I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing this for like the big job that comes along. I'm doing this for being top of mind with my customers, right? So that customer's not going off. I'm losing contact with them. They run into somebody, a friend, and they're like, hey, do you know any painters? And they're not even thinking of me. But now with the service contract, now I'm tapping into all of those referrals because I'm staying top of mind. So that's the trick. So I got kind of like that strategy got kind of thrown off for a minute because I tried to raise the price. I was like, well, I'll make this profitable, super profitable. And, but that's not the strategy. So what I'll say is like, I ended up bumping it up, from a lower price point, and I'll just throw it out there. We charge $288 if you pay annually. So it's $288 for the whole year if you pay up front, and you get up to 2 visits. And I tried to bump it up to like $500, and nobody was like biting. But I have some things that like keep me protected at that 288. Like one, I say it's up to 2 visits, because if they don't feel the need for a second visit, well, that's fine. They'll just do the one, and that's where I make a little bit better of a margin, right?
Right.
The other thing too is it's up to 4 hours of service, so they don't have to use the full 4 hours of service, but it's up to that. So if we come out and they only need this one service and it only takes us 2 hours, well, I made a little bit better margin on that visit. The I'm trying to think the other, yeah. So, like having that verbiage in my contract that it's up to 2 visits, it's up to 4 hours. And then I also have in the verbiage that if you go over 4 hours, then we'll charge you at an hourly rate that we have set. So that protects me. So, like if my guys end up being there for 5 hours, well, we're making that money back on the hourly rate. So, yeah,
that's great, man. So if you get 100 people on a service contract, you're at like what, $28,000 or something like that
annually. Yeah.
But still, then you're the stickiness of it, and they're not going to use another painter when they need a whole house or they move or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's what I was saying. Like the idea with this is not to think of it as like, oh, this is going to be like this crazy profitable cash cow. Where the value is like I just mentioned, is staying top of mind, because you're tapping into those relationships, and those referrals that your customers have, and our customers love it. I mean, it's when we get feedback about it, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. The last thing, a question I have about it is, you mentioned about if you pay annually, is that like, I would imagine it's just easier to do annually than like monthly, and then you have to charge them every month or something like that. It's just like, here's an annual contract, or what have you seen people wanting to do?
I mean, most people just choose to pay annually, so you get the money up front. So I when I send over the service contract, we use Jobber, so we send it over, and we have like the service contract terms as one line item, which tells all the different services that they can choose from and how the contract works. And then we send over 2 options to sign up annually at a discounted rate of $288. Or you can sign up and pay monthly, and it's still a year contract, but you'll end up paying $360 for the year. So $30 a month if you do the monthly contract. Most people just end up paying the annual fee. We require a card on file. They have to pay 100% of that cost up front. And then we schedule their services out.
Yeah, that's great. I could also see, like, if you do a big project, $10,000 painting, it's like, hey, why don't you get the service contract on here? We'll do a touch up in 6 months, blah, blah, blah. I could see that being very easy sale.
We just wrapped up it was a big project, a $22,000 contract, and we got that customer on the service contract, and their riverfront property here in Florida, there's just those homes that are on beachside, with all the salt water and salt in the air, like, things just get tore up. So we pitched it to them, and we've got them on an annual contract. And, it's, we also tell our customers, like, hey, if you sign up for our service contract at the time of sale, we'll discount your project. So, like, let's say they have let's say a $10,000 exterior repaint. We'll say, hey, we'll give you 10% off of that 10,000 if you go ahead and sign up for our annual service contract. And so they're essentially, what they're getting is like that service contract, basically kind of rolled into their project.
Yeah.
Cost.
Man, I love it. I don't know many other painting companies that have something like that, but I think it's awesome, and I think you're definitely onto something. I had John Warlow on our show from Built to Sell, that book, and he has another book called Automatic Customer, and he was talking about, like, there's so many ideas out here, and I know a lot of business owners that I speak with, it's the implementation is so hard to figure out.
It's scary.
Scary, yeah, and they get stuck. They get stuck. Yeah.
I can say that that's 100%. Like, I've had this idea for years, but I was scared to implement it because there you're right. There's not a ton of painting contractors out there who do this. I don't know of any personally that have a service contract. So if you have one, let's talk, collaborate. If you want to have one, you want to learn how to do it, reach out to me. But I don't know very many, so I didn't really have like a model to go after.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like, oh, this is a risk, but I set it up and it's been amazing. And I was scared for a lot of different reasons. Like, man, what if, how am I going to get to all these little jobs? Where am I going to fit them into my schedule? Are they going to be profitable? And it's worked out amazingly. And the customer feedback has been pretty incredible too.
Yeah. That's awesome. Another thing I learned about you when I was doing some research was that we have a similar thing that we faced in our past, which was the scarcity mindset of things.
Yeah,
Oh
sure.
man, it was for me. I've broken out of it, luckily, and I'm very much abundance mindset. But I think a lot of times for people in the trades, maybe they didn't come from all this money, and they just kind of get into the trades, and it's like, oh, I'm making some money here. I had Josh Zolan on our show about blue collar's the new white collar. And it's
Yeah,
like, you start making some money, but then it's so scary because you're like, oh
right.
my, this is the most money I've ever seen. Like, what do I do? And do I take this risk? Do I do this? Can you talk me
Hmm.
through, like, obviously you were kind of taking a lot of risk with all the stuff, but how did what's your experience been like that? And how are you working through that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I had a really interesting upbringing. Single mom, she raised like me and my two other siblings, and then we had an older sister, and my mom just ended up taking on her two kids. So it was a lot of like burden for my mom to take on. And my oldest sister, because of her habits and stuff, she created a lot of just turmoil for us. And a lot of that ended up being in the way of like finances. So, like, I mean, I've moved over 50 times, in my short life. I've experienced being homeless. Like when I was like, I think I was 15 or 16, I was living in the back of a beach store, sleeping on the stock shelves. Like my bed was like folded up t-shirts, and I was like taking clothes off the rack to like wear them to school. I was like skateboarding down to my friend's house to shower, catching the bus at his house so like people wouldn't. I had a couple friends that knew about that. One of them, he's actually his name's Ryan Blackwell, and he was part of he's now a Purple Heart. He was shot in down in Panama City when I guess it was the Air Force Base got attacked, and he was one of the
Oh,
people who
wow.
got shot. But he was a good friend of mine, and he knew about it, and his family did, and he kind of knew about our financial struggles. But like I've lived in hotels, like family of what was it, like six people, one hotel, sleeping on the floor, just it was rough. And so as I got older, one of the things that I had to wrestle is like I really want for my life, like now I'm married, I have two kids, I want stability, right?
Mhm.
So that can be you have to battle that mindset of like, okay, I came from like scarcity and like not having a lot. And so like I sometimes it is a battle to like take risk because I'm wanting to create that stability. I just had this conversation with somebody a couple of
Mm.
days ago at lunch, but really, it's still a challenge for me. And I tell my wife, I'm like, it's probably a good thing that I'm married to you and like that we have kids, because if I wasn't, I would honestly probably be an even bigger risk taker,
Yeah.
just because I know what it's like to not have. So it doesn't, you know what I mean? I'm like, it
Oh,
doesn't scare me,
yeah, I
right?
completely agree. Like I know what it's like to just like, eat macaroni and cheese every night and like I'm cool with it. Like I've been there, I'm cool with that.
Right.
So like I can
Yeah.
go and take all these risks, but I completely agree with you. I think when you have a wife and, kids, it's like, okay, how can I like build a stable lifestyle for us and still take risk on top of it, but not be reckless?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's tough.
I think for me, like if anything, like having my family, it's like it's made me very like in a midst. I fight. It's when everything happened in 2022, like that was my motivation to get up every single day and not quit, and not give
Yeah.
up when things got hard. Cause it was like, okay, I've got my family, and I can't just quit,
Yeah.
And so I think it's actually a good thing that I had that experience as a kid, because I'm like, I'm not gonna quit. So
Yeah.
it's this weird like balance of like, okay, yes, I'm not. You have to be willing to take those risks, but at the same time, like I'm not afraid to fail.
Oh,
And when I do, I'm motivated to get back up and keep moving forward, if that makes sense. So, um, I would say like it's not that it's not there. Like I still have that fear of like um scarcity or not being enough, or not providing that stability for my family that I wanted so badly when I was a kid. It's still there, but they motivate me to push past that, if that makes sense.
yeah. Makes complete sense. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. If you
For
could,
sure.
what's the biggest change coming in your industry? Painting, the trades. Like, what do you think is some of the big stuff coming? I don't know, AI painters or drone, drone exterior painting and stuff. But what do you see? What do you see in?
To be honest with you, I haven't seen a lot in that sense of the how robots, like robotics or AI in that sense. I think the painting industry is kind of like behind the ball when it comes to like, and I've talked on other podcasts with people about this, but like professionalism and, kind of professionalizing the industry, it kind of has been behind.
Mm,
When you look at other industries like HVAC, plumbing, some of those roofing, they've kind of professionalized,
yeah,
and they can attract some pretty top talent. And I think there's a smaller amount of companies in the painting industry that have like professionalized. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for companies to that are willing to take on the challenge to really lead the way in that. And that's kind of like, that's where my motivation is. And unfortunately, I feel like the subcontracting model kind of holds back the painting industry,
mm,
because it keeps companies from creating that professionalism, and like companies that have really strong foundations, in my opinion. But I would like to see more of a professionalizing of our industry, and I think people are entertaining AI in some sense for like administrative stuff, but as far as like technology, like Paul, right?
yeah,
With I'm completely forgetting his last name right now, but um, Green Industry Podcast.
yeah, yeah.
Um, anyway, he'll like post these videos of like these robotic
Jameson.
Paul
Yeah,
Jameson, yeah. He'll post these videos of like these robotic lawnmowers, like
yeah,
I saw one in Orlando. I was like getting on to 417, and I looked over and there's this lawnmower just like cutting the grass on the freeway. And
wow.
I was like, wow, this is crazy. But yeah, I don't know that painting is there yet. You
There,
know,
there's this company. I'm gonna have the guy on. He's venture backed. I'm connected with him on LinkedIn. He does drone pressure washing.
yeah,
It's
yeah, I've seen
crazy.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like
I mean,
crazy stuff.
I'm not like a techie type person, but I would
Mm,
assume like for painting, like you'd have to have some pretty crazy prep work involved with the labor before you could like have a drone go out and just start spraying paint on a house.
I agree.
Um,
I agree.
I'm sure there's some like applications where maybe quality and precision isn't as much of a focus,
Yeah.
that you could get away with some of that like robotics and AI and automation and all that. But when you're talking about like going inside of somebody's house, I just
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, maybe there is a technology where you like map out the entire room, and maybe this robot like scans it, and all you got to do is like mask it off, and it's like psh, 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 psh,
That would
I
be crazy.
don't know.
That
Yeah,
would
it
be
would
cool.
be.
But thanks, man. So this has been great. Where should people get in contact with you? What's the best place to connect?
Yeah, I would say the best place to connect with me is probably two places. Instagram. I'm really active on Instagram. That's like my social media of choice. It sounds like a drug. My
Yeah.
social media of choice is Instagram. And then also my website, brandensewell.com. My name's spelled Branden, Sewell, Sewell.com. You can also feel free to send me an email at brandon@sealpropainting.com. And yeah, I'd love to connect.
Awesome. One other idea I forgot to mention. Do you have a seal of approval or anything seal related that's like catchy like that?
I mean, we have our seal, like our
Yeah, your
seal logo.
actual seal logo. I think it would be cool to have like a seal of approval or some sticker or something that's like a play on word.
Oh,
I was thinking that
yeah,
when we
that's
talked
funny.
about that would be
We
really cool.
No, I mean we have these stickers that we'll like put on the paint buckets when we leave behind, but that's funny, yeah. Like here, the seal of approval. Yeah.
There you go. Cool, man. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate it, and look forward to keeping up a conversation and building our relationship together.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, talk to you later.
Later.